The Emperor's Mirror, what Marcus Aurelius taught about control. It's the word that quietly rules our lives. We crave it. In our work, in our relationships, in the image we build for others to see. We cling to it like a shield, believing that if we can control enough, we can finally feel safe. But what Marcus Aurelius understood, and what most of us spend our whole lives discovering, is that control is an illusion when it's aimed outward, and liberation when it's aimed inward. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In that single sentence lies the essence of Stoicism. Not the cold detachment many assume, but a radical, compassionate form of mastery over the only realm that truly belongs to you, your inner world. We live in a time of noise, social feeds, endless choices, constant demands on our attention. And in all that chaos, we start to believe that peace is found in fixing everything around us. But peace doesn't come from control over circumstances. It comes from composure within uncertainty. Marcus understood that even an emperor cannot command the weather, the fates, or the hearts of others. He could only command the empire of his own mind. So he trained himself in silence. Each morning, he reminded himself that the day ahead would bring frustration, arrogance, and disappointment, and each evening, he reflected on how well he had ruled himself. This was the Emperor's mirror, not a reflection of appearance or power, but of conduct and calm. He didn't ask, "Did I control the world today?" He asked, "Did I control myself?" That's the first lesson. Control begins not by tightening your grip on life, but by loosening your grip on what you cannot hold. People will change, plans will fail, life will surprise you in ways both cruel and kind. And yet, none of that has the power to define you, unless you surrender your inner stability to it. You see, most suffering doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from how much we resist what happens. The Stoics called this the discipline of assent, the ability to pause between event and emotion. Something happens. You feel the spark of anger, fear, or pride. But instead of reacting, you stop, and you choose. You decide whether this thing deserves your peace. That moment, that pause, is where freedom lies. Marcus once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." In other words, reality rarely breaks us. Our judgment about reality does. So ask yourself, how many times have you been hurt not by what someone did, but by what you thought it meant? How often has your anger lasted longer than the event itself? The Stoic practice of control is not suppression, it's transformation. It turns reaction into reflection, and reflection into power. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. Even Marcus, the philosopher-emperor, struggled with it daily. That's why his meditations were never written for the world. They were reminders to himself. To stay awake, to stay grounded, to stay in command of the only kingdom that mattered, his own mind. He wasn't preaching perfection. He was practicing endurance. That's the second lesson. Control is not a fixed state. It's a continuous act of returning to yourself. Like steering a ship in shifting winds, it requires constant correction. You'll lose your calm, you'll slip into emotion, you'll break your own rules, and that's okay. The Stoic path isn't about never falling. It's about never forgetting how to stand back up. To live as Marcus did is to accept that the external world is chaotic, and that your job is not to end the chaos, but to remain unmoved by it. The test of control isn't whether life goes your way. It's whether you stay aligned with your principles when it doesn't. You can control your words, your thoughts, your actions, that's it. Everything else is wind. To fight the wind is to exhaust yourself. To work with it is to move with grace. The third lesson is humility. Control without humility becomes tyranny, over others or over yourself. Marcus ruled the greatest empire on earth, yet he called himself a student of reason. He reminded himself that his body would rot, his name would fade, his victories would be forgotten. Not because he was cynical, but because he refused to be enslaved by pride. He knew that arrogance is just another form of losing control, it's the mind's rebellion against impermanence. And humility frees you. When you stop needing to prove your importance, you regain power over your peace. You can walk through failure without collapsing, and through success without losing yourself. You begin to live, as Marcus said, in agreement with nature. Which means accepting that everything changes, and that change is not an enemy but the essence of life itself. The fourth lesson is detachment. Not detachment from emotion, but from illusion. When you stop demanding that life be fair, or people be perfect, or outcomes be certain, you stop suffering twice. You experience reality as it is, not as your ego wants it to be. That's the kind of control that can't be shaken by fortune, rejection, or loss. Because your stability no longer depends on what happens, but on who you choose to be within it. Marcus wrote, "A cucumber is bitter. Then throw it away. There are brambles in the path. Step aside." Enough. He wasn't being harsh. He was being free. He meant, stop dramatizing what simply is. You can't control the bitterness of the cucumber or the thorns in the bush, but you can control whether you carry them in your mind all day. And that's the heart of this philosophy. Control is not about dominance, it's about discipline. It's not about changing others, it's about refining yourself. When you master your attention, you master your emotions. When you master your emotions, you master your life. The fifth lesson, perspective. Every event is neutral until you label it. The Stoics practiced something called the view from above, a mental exercise where you imagine yourself looking down from the sky, seeing yourself, your city, your country, your planet, all as part of a vast unfolding. From that height, your problems shrink, your anger fades, your fears become almost laughable. You see that everything is connected, that the thing you're upset about today will be forgotten in a week, a year, a lifetime. Perspective restores proportion, and proportion restores peace. The sixth lesson, acceptance. We resist life when we think it owes us something. But Marcus taught that the universe owes us nothing, and that's what makes everything it gives a gift. Control isn't about forcing outcomes, it's about cooperating with reality. When you stop arguing with what is, you conserve your energy for what can be done. Acceptance is not surrender, it's alignment. It's choosing to move with life, not against it. The seventh lesson, self-command. The Stoics didn't aim to suppress emotion, they aimed to direct it. Anger can become justice. Fear can become caution. Pain can become wisdom. When you control yourself, even your suffering becomes useful. As Marcus said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In every obstacle lies the material for growth. Control means not letting hardship decide who you are. The eighth lesson, compassion. You cannot truly control yourself if you are consumed by resentment toward others. Marcus constantly reminded himself that people act out of ignorance, not evil. To control your reaction to others is to rise above them, not to despise them. He said, when another blames you or hates you, go to his soul. See what sort of person he is. Then you will realize there is no reason to be upset. Compassion is emotional control matured into wisdom. It's the strength to remain kind in an unkind world. The ninth lesson, mortality. Remembering that you will die brings instant clarity. Marcus often reflected on his own death, not morbidly, but to free himself from trivial attachments. When you truly grasp that time is limited, you stop wasting it on what you can't control. You stop arguing with fools, chasing validation, or fearing embarrassment. Control your use of time, because that is the only currency you cannot earn back. The 10th lesson, discipline of thought. Most people believe thoughts are automatic. They're not. You can choose which ones to feed. You can starve envy, fear, and comparison by not entertaining them. As Marcus said, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. If your mind is a garden, then control is the gardener's hand. Tend it daily, or weeds will take over. The 11th lesson, purpose. Control is easiest when you have direction. When your actions are guided by values, not emotions, your choices become clear. Marcus never sought glory, he sought virtue. He believed that to live in alignment with reason and nature was to live well, even amidst loss. Purpose makes control meaningful. Without it, self-discipline becomes repression. With it, self-discipline becomes peace. And the 12th lesson, surrender. After all the reasoning, reflection, and restraint, the highest form of control is to let go. Not in defeat, but in trust. Marcus wrote, "Love only what happens, what was destined." No greater harmony. This is the ultimate freedom, to see that the universe is not against you. It's simply unfolding as it must. You cannot control its rhythm, but you can choose how gracefully you move with it. Control, in the Stoic sense, is not about power. It's about poise. It's the art of standing still in the storm, not because the storm has passed, but because you've realized the wind cannot touch your center. It's the quiet confidence that you can handle whatever comes, not because you control the outcome, but because you control yourself. That is the emperor's mirror, the reflection of a mind unruled by emotion, unbroken by circumstance, unchained by fear. And the truth is, you don't need to wear a crown to live like an emperor. You just need to remember that the greatest empire you'll ever govern is your own mind.